Hello. Now we're going to continue our work with fractions, and we're going to look at algebraic fractions, so fractions involving different letters or variables, and we're going to look at how to add and subtract them. This is going to follow exactly the same steps as what we did for adding and subtracting number fractions. So we're going to start off, and we know that when we're adding or subtracting fractions, we must get the same number on the bottom, and we call that the lowest common denominator. We're always looking for the smallest number that we can change both of these numbers into. So the smallest multiple of these two numbers. So in this case, the smallest multiple of 2 and 3 is going to be 6. That's the smallest number that both of these numbers divide into. So I'm going to change them around by multiplying the 2 by 3 to give me 6, and I must do the same thing on the top of my fraction in order to keep everything, in order to keep my ratio the same. And 3 I must multiply by 2 in order to get 6. So I end up with 3 multiplied by x, I write as 3x. I don't need to write in the brackets with algebra, just 3 sitting next to an x is going to mean 3x all over 6 plus 2 multiplied by x, I just write as 2 times x, or 2x all over 6 is going to equal 3x plus 2x. I add the top numbers and numerators is equal to 5x all over 6. And that's my final answer. Here, I again want to get the lowest common denominator. I have 2 and 7. So what's the lowest common denominator? What's the lowest common multiple of 2 and 7? It's going to be 14. That's the smallest number that both of these numbers divide into. So then I'm going to have, I need to get 14 on the bottom here. So I'm going to multiply the bottom by 7 to get 14, and I must multiply the top by 7 as well. And 7 multiplied by 2 would give me 14, so I must multiply above and below by 2. So I get 21a all over 14 minus 8a all over 14. Now I have the denominators the same, I can add up the numerators. So I have 21a minus 8a all over 14, and I get 13a all over 14. And that's my final answer. So I can add up my a's or my x's because they are like terms. They both just contain x's or both just contain a's, so I can count them up. Now I have my fraction down here, and I have 5 underneath the line and 15 underneath the line. So what's my lowest common denominator going to be? Well, I could just multiply the two of them together, but I'd end up with a really big number that I don't really want to have to deal with. But if I'm careful, what's the smallest number that I can divide 15 into, and the smallest number I can divide 5 into? Well, that would be 15. 15 divided by 15 is 1, and 15 divided by 5 would be 3. So I want to multiply this fraction by 3 over 3 to get the denominator of 15. I don't need to do anything to my second fraction because it's already got the denominator I want. 6m, 3 by 2m, 3 by 2 is 6, multiplied by m, all over 15, plus m, all over 15. Now they're both over 15, so I can add them together. So I add my numerators together, and I get 7m all over 15, and that's my job done. Now I don't need to just be given I don't need to just be given two terms to add together or subtract from each other. I can also get 3 or 4 or 5. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I've done so far. And if I get a whole number, if I get x just by itself, what does that secretly mean? It means x is divided by 1. Its denominator is 1. So again, if I just lowest common denominator, if I want to get the lowest common denominator, the smallest number that I can divide all of these numbers into, what's it going to be? It's going to be 14. 14 divided by 14 is 1. 14 divided by 7 is 2. 14 divided by 1 is 14. So the lowest common multiple of these three numbers is 14. So I need to multiply my 1 by 14, and therefore I must do the same thing on the top. I don't need to do anything to the 14 here because it's already 14. And the 7 I must multiply above and below by 2. So I get 14x all over 14 plus 5x all over 14 minus 4x all over 14. Now they're all over 14, so I can add them all up. So I get 14x plus 5x minus 4x all over 14. So I end up in total with 15x all over 14. And that's as far as I can go, so that's my final answer. Now here, again, I'm looking for my lowest common denominator, as I always am. So I have 5, 10, and 2. What's the smallest number that I can divide 5, 10, and 2 into? 10. So 10 divided by 10 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my lowest common multiple is going to be 10. So I need to multiply this 5 by 2, and I must do the same thing on top in order to keep everything balanced. I don't need to do anything here because I already have 10. And here I need to multiply by 5, and therefore I must multiply the top by 5. 8c all over 10 minus 9c all over 10 plus 5c all over 10. Now everything is over 10, so I'm able to add up 8c minus 9c plus 5c all over 10. Add up my two numbers here, I end up with 8c minus 9c is minus 1c plus 5c all over 10 is equal to minus 1c plus 5c. If I start at minus 1 and I add 5, I end up with 4c plus 4c all over 10. And I could leave my answer there, but if I'm being careful, I can see that I have a common factor. If I have 4 over 10, I know that that would be the same as 2 over 5. So for completeness, we can simplify that down to 2c all over 5 if we're able to spot it. We divide above and below by our common factor of 2, and we end up getting 2c all over 5 as our final answer. And that's what we need for adding and subtracting basic algebraic fractions.